The 3D platformer, a genre so iconic that it more or less defined an entire generation of games. Rising from the ashes of their two-dimensional ancestors, games like Mario 64, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon and Banjo-Kazooie dominated shelves in homes around the world. Predominantly a kid-friendly genre of games, 3D platformers were, for the most part, innocent and accessible to even the youngest of gamers. So when the original Ratchet and Clank came out in 2002, featuring large, upgradable guns, smart riding with jokes absolutely riddled with adult innuendo, super tight controls, and some of the best visuals available on any platform at the time, an instant classic was born. 9 games later, and 3 years since the duo's last major adventure, Ratchet and Clank has been given a fresh coat of paint in what Insomniac are calling a reimagining of the first game. In reality, this is a game based on a movie that's based on a game. Yeah, you heard that right. Ratchet and Clank the movie was released in April of 2016, and according to both critics and the general public, was a relatively shithouse theatrical experience. So, apart from being a surprisingly well-polished 3D action platformer, this may be the only time in existence where a movie-based game was actually better than the movie that it was based on. The script writing is on point, and actually had me laugh out loud a few times in my playthrough. However, die-hard fans of the Ratchet and Clank series of games may feel like this is more of a greatest hits album than a new release in the series, because despite a clever script and slightly different take on events, this is still the original Ratchet and Clank game with a rather familiar array of weapons to boot. There are 16 weapons available in Ratchet and Clank, 14 of which have appeared in the duo's previous games. The 2 new weapons, the Pixelator and the Proton Drum, are probably my 2 favourite weapons in the game. The Pixelator deserves a special mention due to its jaw-dropping design. It acts as a shotgun of sorts, blasting enemies with a green wave of pixelated energy. Enemies caught in this blast zone are pixelized themselves and can shatter into hundreds of tiny pixels with one swift swing from Ratchet's wrench. The effects on all the weapons, and this gun especially, are just incredible to watch. And Insomniac has actually stated that getting enemies to pixelate after being hit by the Pixelator was actually one of the hardest things to accomplish in developing Ratchet and Clank. All of the weapons in the game are upgradable, but more importantly than that, they're just a hell of a lot of fun to use. Groovatroning an entire room full of enemies, and then pulling out the Sheepinator and turning those poor little bastards into harmless livestock is something that only a Ratchet and Clank game can offer. One of the more surprising things about Ratchet and Clank was the visuals. I mean, this game looks fantastic. It may even be one of the best looking games on the current generation of consoles. I was legitimately shocked that a modern day 3D platformer could look this good despite running at a maximum of 30 frames per second. And look, I'll be honest, usually I notice when a game is locked at 30 FPS. But to get around the drop in frame rate, the visuals contain a large amount of motion blur. And what this means is you end up not really noticing the lock in frame rate at all. And plus, I was having far too much fun breaking hundreds of boxes and collecting bolts to further upgrade my weapons. I was having too much fun searching for hidden areas, and really just exploring the beautiful levels to care. The average player can clock the game in around 10 hours, which makes it the perfect partner for a weekend fling. If you plan on smashing out a platinum trophy, then you should be looking to invest around 20 to 25 hours. Ratchet and Clank isn't really a difficult game, so don't go in expecting a challenge. It is, however, a much more affordable new release. I managed to pick up a copy for under $50, less than 2 weeks after its Australian release. When you compare this to the usual $80 to $100 price tag for new release games, Ratchet and Clank offers quite a lot of bang for your buck. Ultimately, Ratchet and Clank probably won't win any Game of the Year awards. It's not going to set your entire world on fire, and it's not going to reinvent any genres either. What it will do, though, is take you on an incredibly enjoyable 10-hour ride of 3D platforming goodness that plays just as good as it looks.